sugar, spice, and everything nice. These were the ingredients chosen to create the perfect little NFTs. But David Yu accidentally added an extra ingredient to the concoction, Immutable X. Thus, Veve Collectibles were born. Yo, what's going on, my Veve OGs, my Omi homies, and everybody else on YouTube? It's your bromie, The Gale, back at it again with the Immutable X video. So, as we grow nearer to our migration to the Ethereum network, I think it's important that we get more familiar with Immutable X, and this Clubhouse discussion that we're about to listen to is going to answer pretty much any and every question that you might have about Veve's migration to Ethereum. So I know this video is kind of long, so watch it at your own leisure whenever you have the time to. But if you have any questions about Immutable X, chances are they will be answered in this video. So without further ado, because this video is long, let's just get into it. Take it away, Reese.
Dan, do you want to just give a bit more insight into how we kind of came to Immutable and made that move?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, similar to like what Robbie was saying, we and as you mentioned, you know, we were talking to a lot of different chains out there, and then, you know, again, very similar to Robbie's philosophy as well, is that really thinking forward into the future, the most important thing is to really understand where the technology is going to go. You know, in terms of interoperability, what everyone's using, I think that's going to come more and more to the fore as crypto and blockchains get, you know, more adapted by the masses. And so for us, you know, looking at all of the other chains, you know, obviously there's Flow and all these guys, and don't get me wrong, they're doing a great job, but, you know, for us it was making sure that we had the highest degree of interoperability, and obviously tapping into, you know, one of the largest networks out there in the crypto space, which is Ethereum at the moment. So yeah, there were, as I think I've mentioned on a couple of other interviews, there were really sort of four key components to choosing the right chain. Number one, which I've mentioned, is interoperability. There was obviously the gas fees, you know, which are currently sort of plaguing Ethereum. So that's where, you know, the layer 2 and immutables technology is very, very advantageous. Number three, you know, the environmental side of things. I mean, I'm still of the opinion that, you know, it's better to buy something digital than something plastic. And of course, there's going to be energy usage with anything out there, but there are obviously degrees of pollution. And I think it's, you know, in my own personal opinion, electricity is better to consume rather than, you know, pumping out plastics. And then, you know, the fourth thing was just the ability to integrate into Veve, which ultimately at the end of the day is a fairly complex product. And the great thing about Immutable is that, you know, they're really a technology company and a technology provider. And that allows us to plug them in the same way that we plug in everything else, whether it's Unity or, you know, any of the other technologies that we use. Whereas some of the other providers out there, you know, it was more about coming under their umbrella and, you know, sort of celebrating who they are. Whereas we're just looking for a tech partner. And then lastly, of course, you know, I think as I've mentioned, we're all from down under. So, you know, it's good to be supporting the Southern Hemisphere technology teams.
That was the main one.
Of course, you know, we got to be south of the equator, right?
That's it.
I did want to say as well, I think one of the really exciting things about this partnership is helping create the ecosystem via our technology. So the thing that really excites me is not only can you do NFT transfers for free or NFT creations, but also ERC20s. So suddenly, you know, if you want to be paying people in say, you know, a fungible token, whether that's Omi or something else, as like an incentive for particular actions, you can now do this in micro actions. So a user does like this particular thing, and they can get a cent, and it doesn't cost you $50 in gas fees. This is how we're looking at working with a lot of partners. So I think that the one of the really exciting things is suddenly the building of a fungible token network is no longer constrained by the gas fees of remitting these tokens.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the same technology that's between ERC20 and the NFTs. Like it's the proofs allowing that to happen on both sides.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it, like you said, it's super exciting. It changes the way that we can reward people. It changes the way that interactions and transactions happen. So, I'm super excited on the migration to get over there. I'm with you. I am an Ethereum maximalist as well, with good reason. I've got a few questions that I think we'll run through just to give everybody an overview of Immutable and those kind of things, and we can open it to community questions later to talk more about Veve moving to Immutable and those kind of things. So if that suits everybody, maybe we'll just start with some of your story, Robbie. How did you get into this space? What led to Gods Unchained, and then we'll get into the Immutable story.
Yeah, of course. I first entered the blockchain space in 2014 with Bitcoin, and before that, my brother and I were software engineers, self-taught, and we had done a bunch of different startups. We were massive gamers, so at one point we built a platform you could bet on your own League of Legends games. We built a Shopify competitor called ShopYak. We also had one of Australia's largest hoverboard companies. So we were really, we just liked building things, and we were getting more and more into software engineering. And in 2014, we found Bitcoin. In particular, in 2015, we found Ethereum. And we loved Ethereum, and we were obsessed with Ethereum. I remember the thing that convinced me that this would be the future of the world was literally just using a gambling app on, I think it was Ethereum. And you essentially throw this dice, and it doubles your money or takes your money. And it wasn't the fact that I'm not a gambler, and I don't think that's the exciting potential of Ethereum, but it's the fact that with 5 or 10 lines of code, someone could create a completely permissionless, disintermediated machine, which could render redundant these hundreds of billions of dollars spent in regulation and compliant payouts and enforcing probabilities overnight. And so clearly this is going to become the future of how kind of all logic and all asset ownership was run. And then in 2017, we saw CryptoPunks come out and the first kind of NFTs. And I remember saying to my brother, this is going to be huge because you're taking the value proposition of crypto, which is self-custodial ownership, the ability to have scarce digital assets and decentralization. So no intermediary or central party. And you're applying it to everything. It's not just financial assets now, it's gaming items, it's unique financial assets, it's stuff, the stuff that financial services exists to financially service. And I know that gaming was the first place that we thought this would take off. And so we said, let's build a game. So we sort of built a proof of concept game called Etherbots back then, which was basically completely on chain. I think it would cost you $8,000 or $10,000 to run a match right now. Learned a lot from that. And then we said, well, look, we want to build NFT infrastructure ultimately, but no one really cares about NFTs. So we have to build compelling content. And to us, that was Gods Unchained, which now obviously has Chris Clay, the guy who made Magic the Gathering Arena, leading that. And obviously the last 2 years, the company have been really focused on NFT infrastructure and how can we help these types of content and others succeed by building a way to trade NFTs completely scalably on a completely secure environment.
Right. There was quite a lot to unpack there. I want to come back to the hoverboard company at some point. But you guys were, I followed Gods Unchained for quite a while now, probably almost since inception. And you guys were pioneers in the space then in figuring out how to maximize the block space to be able to run those transactions on chain. Now, I think it's probably fair to say that with gas and congestion and things, you then needed to find a new solution, which I assume is how the road led to Immutable. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. And the two criteria I always say we had to look at was number one, security, and number two, network effects. And they're really, you can't compromise on either of those. And so we looked at a ton of solutions back in the day. We looked at state channels, we looked at plasma, to be quite honest, nothing existed, which I think is why, people had to go to alternatives. People had to go to things like GoChain back in the day. But then, we first saw the first mainnet implementation of scalability a couple of years ago with zero knowledge proofs. And we said, this doesn't compromise on security. So no matter what, users' assets are safe. And that's important because, even looking at what you built with Veve, there's going to be billions of dollars worth of assets on this thing. You can't have that on something which is insecure, or people won't be buying this stuff that the value that it should have. Like, this has to be absolutely locked down. So that was kind of our first criterion. And second is network effects. Like, you have to build it on the thing that people already want to use. And that's why we didn't want to compete with Ethereum. We wanted to build a scaling solution on top of Ethereum. And that's kind of how we came to the infrastructure we've built today.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with the network effects. It's, a big driver as to why we're moving back to Ethereum now. But do you want to just explain how that technology actually helps you to is it compressing transactions? Is it that most of the logic happens off chain and you're just committing financial transactions to the main chain? Like, what is the stack there, and how does that kind of operate?
Yeah, great question. So it's really simple. Basically, instead of transactions occurring on the Ethereum mainnet and everything costing gas, you take those same transactions, but instead of them, being a transaction, they're just a signature. So you're taking your private key and you're saying, yep, I'm executing this trade. And we can obviously never falsify those things. They're still guaranteed by the same level of security that you do when you do an ordinary transaction, because it's relating to your private key. And then what we do is we batch all of those signatures up into what is called a zero knowledge proof, which we're able to have it upload to the Ethereum mainnet at a very fixed cost. So we could take hundreds of thousands of transactions and upload them, say, for the cost of 100.
Right. I didn't realize it was a fixed cost kind of thing. So the limitations are really just a matter of how much adoption you have as to how much data you can send back or choose to send back to the main chain.
Exactly. Look, technically polylogarithmic, but functionally fixed cost. And our costs do scale, but they actually scale with like AWS instances. So the maths that it takes to create these proofs is quite intensive, and that's not cheap, but it is very cheap compared to 100 Gwei gas fees on Ethereum.
Yeah. So then, in your choosing of StarkWare's ZK proofs, I'm guessing there's a few other ZK providers out there. I mean, what was the reasoning with going with their technology, and what is it that makes it more specific for NFTs or better suited to you guys?
Yeah, look, I think StarkWare was just by far the best ZK proof implementer for building the scaling infrastructure we wanted to. I could list some things that are important, but they don't sound that interesting. So they're quantum resistant, which means they're future proof into the next couple of decades. What was really important to us ultimately is the scale of companies we want to be able to service are, like you're bringing hundreds of thousands of users over and a ton of assets. You can't do that on an optimism or an optimistic rollup, even though that is a better solution for some things. And there's two reasons to that. The first is user custody and security is reduced because it has a 2-week fraud period every time you upload a batch. So if you want to withdraw your funds from the rollup, you have to wait 2 weeks. And you can kind of get around that with DeFi applications, with market makers and stuff. You can't with a unique NFT. I can't loan you or figure out the value of your, one of a kind collectible. But the second one is much simpler, which is it's less cost efficient. So at the scale of transactions we're doing, we can afford to power hundreds of thousands of transactions. Whereas even on an optimistic rollup, you are still paying, essentially a linear cost per transaction, even though that's a reduced linear cost. So it just simply doesn't work for the scale of companies that we're trying to power.
Okay, so it's more on the scale of companies than the actual assets that are being moved, or it's all in part of the same thing?
I think they're both really important. So at the end of the day, we're trying to build a solution where if someone wants to withdraw their assets, they should be able to, almost instantaneously and with complete confidence that they get to retain full control of their funds and full control of those assets at all times. So that's something we never wanted to compromise on, because that's what allows these, market caps to become so valuable. This portfolio of unique assets. It's the underlying the underlying security and trust that people know that their assets are stored with.
Yeah, absolutely. When people move to layer 2, where do you see that? Does the user experience then just stay at layer 2, or can you move between layer 1 and layer 2? Is there a need for that once you've made the transition? Like, how does that all kind of tie in?
Yeah, of course, absolutely. I mean, the thing that I love about Immutable X is like you can withdraw your assets at any time, and we're building out features that support that. So, I mean, the ideal thing to me is, like, let's imagine you have a bunch of collectibles and you want to create an index fund out of those collectibles and allow people to participate to save in DeFi. It's all very well and good to try and do that right now, but every single time you want to list one of those items in an index in a secure manner, it costs you a gas fee. So if you want to put, say, 100 collectibles into like a particular collectible index fund and allow that to be traded or listed, you're talking about 100 times gas fees. So 100 times 50 and $5,000. Or if it's 10,000, you're looking at an even bigger number. And so the kinds of things we're building is via zero knowledge proofs, the ability to turn that into an index fund in our layer 2 environment, and then take the resulting ERC20 back to layer 1 and use that in your DeFi or whatever. So whatever we can create cheaply and securely in our layer 2 empowers people to interoperate with layer 1 in a much, much better manner. But like, absolutely, at the core of what we're doing is, like, you own your stuff. You can do whatever you like with that, whether that's withdrawing it back to layer 1, and there's no centralized bridge in between. It's not a side chain, it's not a different layer 1 or a Polkadot or a parachain. Like, this lives and breathes with the same level of security and the same level of interoperability as mainnet assets on Ethereum.
Yeah. I think that's really integral to the design, and as you say, it's so crucial to the security moving forward. Obviously, ETH being the most decentralized blockchain now, I think it's trumped Bitcoin in that regard, or it's close to, if it hasn't yet. It's really cool to see this kind of stuff evolve. How long has Immutable actually been live? It's not that. We're not that.
It's brand new. The actual protocol is brand new. So we had Epic's GG go live on Immutable X last week, which is really exciting, with their collective marketplace. We basically, we've been around for a few months now in beta, and we're rolling out our permissionless version of Immutable X over the coming weeks, where anyone's going to be able to come and kind of start instantly using us, which I think is really important.
Yeah. So it does kind of become a bit more plug and play for new companies to move over. Yeah, unreal. And can you just give me a bit of a rundown on, I guess, the umbrella of Immutable? Obviously, you guys are the protocol layer or the chain, and then we come and build on top, same way that Veve's moving across. But you also have an Immutable marketplace. Is that a collective marketplace for all apps that are built on top, or is it just for Gods Unchained right now? Like, how does that kind of map out?
Yeah, good question. It's a separate product to our protocol. Ultimately, why we build the marketplace is to be of service to companies building on top of us. So, the goal of that is basically to have a place that you can view any asset listed on Immutable X, but we certainly don't plan on listing, competing with marketplaces. Like, we're not going to be listing assets that aren't on Immutable X.
Right.
And, I'm sure that'll evolve over time, whether that's into more of a block explorer or we consider open sourcing it. Ultimately, our goal is just to help the businesses building on Immutable X build better products faster.
Yeah. And did I see recently you guys have mentioned something with OpenSea as well, or OpenSea is integrating the Immutable X protocol?
Yeah, we're really excited about that. So we'll be a supported layer 2 on OpenSea. So any asset that you trade on Immutable X, that's, so any, say, Veve collectible will also be viewable and tradable on OpenSea.
Yeah, okay.
And the goal is to have that supported anywhere, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Same, everywhere these things can be supported is better for the ecosystem as a whole, I would think. Okay, that's interesting. I mean, is there a goal in terms of transactions that you want to be able to achieve? Have you got sort of rough estimates as to how expansive this ecosystem is yet to become?
Yeah, this is where we probably diverge. StarkWare at the end of the day is creating proof technology. So that's their thing. They do the maths and they're fantastic at that, and we have a very strong partnership with them. What we're trying to do is build the network and the protocol and the ecosystem to power all unique assets around the world. Ideally, we want to be, if you're trading a unique asset, whether that's a bond, whether that's a term deposit, whether that's a Batman collectible, whether that's a video game item, or whether that's a rare piece of art, we want to help make it so that if you're trading on Immutable X, you have a completely frictionless experience. You get the best possible price for those assets. And if businesses are building things, they can create these NFTs at massive, massive scale. So, tens of millions of NFTs per day.
Yeah, incredible. I think, I'm guilty of this. When I think NFT, I think collectibles, because that's obviously the space that we're in. But it's easy to forget that NFTs really can represent any sort of asset, any illiquid asset. And I guess that's the market sector for that is just exponential in itself. So that's that'll be cool to watch develop. Where do you see the future of L2s? I mean, are all L2s going to be able to talk to each other at some point? Is that kind of the goal, or is everyone just building individually at the moment?
Yeah, I'm sure that L2 interoperability will happen. It will always happen in the same way as, sidechain interoperability happens or other things. So I think there will be benefits to using a particular L2 dedicated for a particular purpose. But look, there are so many different companies wanting so many different things out of blockchain. Some companies want a completely walled garden. They want to build, a closed blockchain environment. Some banks, want to use things like Ripple, and that's their positioning. And ultimately, that's fine. All that I'm about is making sure users know the difference. Because to me, it's very, very important. Because whichever one of these takes off and truly does become the network for how things are traded, is going to become the governing standard by which we own digital assets in the future. And I think it's very important that that's decentralized and not owned by a VC, and not owned by a particular company. And that's why we decided to leave that stuff to Ethereum, rather than trying to, say, create a competing blockchain or sidechain.
Yeah, absolutely. As you mentioned earlier, you're very aligned with Ethereum and those values there. Did you look at other chains? Was that ever an option, or was it always Ethereum?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm not an Ethereum maximalist for no reason. I'm an Ethereum maximalist because Ethereum in March had 2 million smart contracts created by developers. Flow had 50. So really, you can't, and this is what Vitalik talks about, giving a project a soul. And I totally understand why people had to use alternative solutions earlier on. But I mean, the reason you guys have made this move is because you care about what's going to be best for your users, and what's going to be best for your business. And you know that your collectibles are going to be more valuable. There are going to be higher adoption of it, and they're going to be completely secure if you can use an infrastructure which inherits the network effects and security of Ethereum. So really, that's what's important to me. Of course, we looked at every blockchain under the sun. We had blockchains offering us tens of millions of dollars to move God's Unchained over to it. It's a very competitive space out there. But I don't ever want to compromise on those two things that I said earlier, which is, one, users need to own their stuff, and no one should be able to take it away from them. And even Ethereum has been classified as not a security by the SEC. So I think even from a regulatory perspective, I'm much more comfortable trying to build the infrastructure for digital assets on there. And the second is network effects. You don't want to be in a siloed environment. You want to be where everyone's trading, because that's when your assets are going to be most valuable, and your users can have the best experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just raises that exposure of all the assets to new audiences as well. As you said, the space is very competitive. I know when we were looking at our new technology partner, that the same thing. A lot of platforms offered us a lot of incentives to move across, but without a doubt, you guys were the best solution for us. Not only because of the low gas and all those things, the carbon neutrality as well, but as you said, Ethereum's really got those network effects going. So,
with the move to Immutable, so this doesn't have to be specific to Veve, but just generally, does being on Immutable, in terms of features for users, does it enable kind of, more ease of transitions into, say, trading in batches? So trading, one NFT for multiple NFTs, linking NFTs together, so sort of interactions in the sense that one NFT can kind of be associated with another. any of these kind of features that people are kind of excited about seeing, would Immutable X be able to kind of support these sort of transactions?
100%. Yeah, awesome question. This is all we are focused on. So at the end of the day, what our company is obsessed with is building the best possible experience to trade unique assets in a decentralized manner. And what is the most important thing? It's liquidity. It's price. It's the ability to trade things for good prices very quickly with people who want to trade it. And that's a really tall ask with NFTs, because NFTs are fundamentally antithetical to liquidity, because the whole point is you have uniqueness and provenance. It's why we never wanted to compromise and use ERC 1155, because you no longer have the uniqueness. You no longer have the ability to say, Ninja used this skin in Fortnite, or this celebrity had this, particular collectible. So that is kind of what we're obsessed with building, is having the flexibility to both retain provenance, but also allow people to trade things in a very liquid manner. Now, to your specific question, you asked about two things. One is one-to-many batch transfers, and two, the ability to trade items based on their characteristics rather than just on their unique ID. The first, absolutely. I mean, the beautiful thing about us is it doesn't cost you to transfer. So if you want to be executing 100 trades, we're building out an experience where you can sign a transaction and all 100 of those go through instantaneously. So suddenly you can have, financial market makers executing algorithmic order books on NFTs and market making and, creating index funds. Like these are the futures where these actually become financial assets. To me, the future of NFTs is we're probably going to see Goldman Sachs trading desks in a decade, and we're going to have hedging strategies where people are going, long French Renaissance NFTs or punks from this particular period, and they're going short on another particular collectible given the cultural zeitgeist. And I think that's awesome. I think that's sick. I think these are the kind of primitives that we want to be able to support. The second thing is 100% check out our article on metadata-based trade orders. This is probably the thing I'm most excited about releasing over the next 6 months, which is the ability to, right now, if you own an NFT and it's a one of a kind, you can only list that NFT for its own specific market. So let's say you have, Gods Unchained is the example I can use. There's 14 million cards in Gods Unchained. That means you actually have 14 million individual order books, each with their own bids, asks, and spreads. And what that means is you can't actually create a bid or an ask on the thing you want to trade. Let's say you don't care about the unique ID, you don't care about the provenance for a particular thing. You just want to buy any asset which hits a criterion. Maybe it is I want to buy any Givenchy asset on Veve or any diamond dragon in Gods Unchained. You can't do that right now. In fact, it's impossible on layer one because that's how NFTs are designed. But with zero knowledge proofs, we can allow you to list instantaneously and simultaneously your asset in both its own unique market and a market based on its metadata. So suddenly you can collapse the 14 million markets in Gods Unchained down to 14,000 just based on the type of card it is, which is literally a 1,000-fold increase in liquidity and likely will have a commensurate impact on price. This is the stuff that really matters. So yeah, it's a great question. It's what we're focused on.
Not Veve specifically, but just in general, how long does it kind of take for a project that's on another chain to kind of migrate onto Immutable, and what are the general steps involved in that migration?
Typically, if it's from another chain, you'd probably be doing a fork of the assets, and so it would just be us, minting those with all the metadata, and we would make it completely provable and auditable. You could very slowly actually deposit it. So if you got it onto Ethereum layer 1 somehow, you could start depositing them into our layer 2. It'd be very expensive and very slow. So yeah, we typically try and make this as easy as possible. It would not take a particularly long time.
Kind of developer support. I know you mentioned that you were looking to open it up and get out of the beta. And I know that you've had some developer platform support in the past with Unchained or Gods Unchained from, I think, Ecomi and maybe some others. But I was wondering if you have any plans for developer API platforms or partnering with someone like that for Immutable X.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have an API platform we're on a constant journey to make that better and better. Ultimately, the vision that I want for Immutable X is anyone can come and use and build NFTs on Ethereum and have them tradable everywhere without ever having to even say hi to us. Obviously, partnerships with people like Veve, we're always going to hold their hand and kind of make sure it's a great experience. But ultimately, we're building infrastructure. And so, hiring Cole, if you're passionate about building that kind of documentation or want to come work with us, please do apply. This is our main thing we're focused on right now.
Okay, so it sounds like you're having a more internal approach and not looking to partner with outside API platforms or developer groups.
What do you mean by outside platforms, Jacob?
I just know that you guys worked with Ecomi in the past. That's the only one I really know of. I think Infura might be another one, things like that. They're kind of building developer tools and APIs to help businesses kind of track the transactions that are occurring. So I was just wondering I know that a lot of people use them for layer 1. So I was wondering if you were going to use them for layer 2 or how that works.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah, 100%. That's it. Slightly different. Absolutely, we'll be pursuing ecosystem support wherever we can. So I believe we already use Ecomi and Infura in our stack. I was more speaking about the experience of integrating with. So Immutable X is a set of APIs to integrate with. You don't need blockchain experience. And improving that documentation, we ultimately want it to be Stripe-like, to come and build a business on Ethereum and NFTs. Anyone should be able to create and trade an NFT in literally 2 hours of work.
That's a good timeline.
That's the goal.
Robbie, I just wanted to touch base in regards to, I know that there has been some talk of buy our collectibles with Ecomi in the near future. I just wanted to know if that will be something that will be us being able to use on the Immutable X platform. I see that it does have payments of Ethereum at the moment. Just wanted to get a little bit more clarification on
100%. I mean, ERC20 full support for any arbitrary ERC20s on our roadmap pretty soon.
And one last question about the marketplace in regards to Immutable X and Veve. 2 questions actually. Is it just going to be the marketplace that's going from the Veve app to Immutable X?
Dan, sorry.
Do you want to clarify your question?
So currently our marketplace is on the Veve app and it can't be taken anywhere, as I know. I just wanted to clarify that we're still going to have everything on the Veve app. It's just now going to be able to be sent to Immutable in other places from Immutable. As he mentioned, it will be have access to OpenSeas once it's on Immutable as well.
Yeah, so I've mentioned a couple of times in previous AMAs and interviews that a lot of that actually is not our decision. It comes down to licensors. Some of the licensors we work with are very open to interoperability. Others are still very scared of it. My personal belief is that over the next coming years that most of the brands and licensors that we work with will open up to that, especially as we start to see some successes with the brands that are open to that. So in terms of the technology side, I mean, 100% yes, that's why, I reference interoperability. But at the end of the day, where Veve as a company is selling the licensed goods or licensed IP from our licensed partners. So that decision really comes down to them.
I know that Veve has kind of cornered the market for NFTs as far as having maybe Terra Virtue as a competitor. For you, Robbie, who do you guys consider your biggest competitor?
Yeah, sure. Biggest competitor is probably pretty simple. I think it's someone, ultimately the answer I give is I think, competing blockchains like Flow, Tron, EOS, the ones who are in particular trying to build the future infrastructure of NFT ownership and do so at the expense of Ethereum. We typically view as our competitors. But I welcome it. The only thing that I wish is that there was, clearer information for people to make these decisions. Because at the end of the day, if you choose to go with one of these solutions and they break and they're insecure, that's your money, gone, and that's the value of the business that's been built on it gone. So I think it's really important at the end of the day that people understand the trade-offs they make when they choose various solutions.
Yeah, and I think that comes down to understanding the difference between a real layer 2 and a sidechain. We touched on it earlier, but obviously sidechains have their own set of validator nodes, which really just makes them more susceptible to attack, or if you have enough money, you really could come and break that network. So as you said, it's important that the right information gets out there. Am I right that really Immutable is the only layer 2 NFT specific solution, isn't it?
Yeah, we're the only one in production.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Oh, that's good news to know as well. All right, we'll take it on.
So I have a question on, what I really like to hear is a couple bit details on how the Veve NFTs will be moving from the Go 721 network and on the Go chain to the Ethereum network on ETH 721. I think there's a lot of confusion on this, and the community could really appreciate some details on this move and a little bit more in general about the topic. I would actually also like to know if we will be seeing something like an Ether scan to be able to see our NFT traffic history anytime soon as well.
Yep, I can dive in there. So to answer your second question, yes, we will be absolutely looking to build out an explorer of some sort, and we're working with Immutable to get that up and running. Obviously, it's very important to see price history, and we want to have that fully integrated into the app and into the product. And then in terms of your first question, I mean, from the user's perspective, very little is going to change. Right now, as you know, Veve is a little bit of a hybrid model. So it really is just going to be about, reminting on the new protocol. But in terms of what the user sees and what the user has to do is very, very little. All of that's going to be behind the scenes. The only thing that will be user-centric or forward-facing is really just the Omi token swap, of which we will have a platform set up very, very similar to the Go WOMI, which will allow users at any time to convert their existing Go OMI over to the new OMI.
If you guys are going to be connecting directly with OpenSea and anybody partnered with Immutable, will they have access to those free gas fees when transferring and maybe even buying collectibles off of OpenSea?
100%. Yeah, we announced it a couple of months ago. The integration's kicking off. OpenSea will basically be allowing you to trade any asset on Immutable X on OpenSea's front end, completely gas free.
Awesome, that's great news. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Can you briefly talk about possibilities regarding DeFi and NFTs, like the combination, staking, lending against your NFTs and stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely. We've already seen a huge amount of innovation there this year, whether it's NFTX or NifTX or any one of the DeFi apps that's kind of springing up. As I think I shared before, our plan is really to try and help those kinds of applications be built on. My goal would be an NFTX can be built on Immutable X, but instead of it costing $50 for every single NFT you want to put inside an index fund, it's now gas free. And you could take the ERC20 fundable token you've just created back to layer 1 ETH and list it on, a Uniswap or use it as collateral to get a loan. Like this stuff is really, really important because ultimately, typically the secondary financial market is about an order of magnitude larger than the primary assets that it exists to serve. So these kinds of things are really important to support.
I think that concept there of being able to use your NFTs as collateral and then take out loans against them in the future and that kind of thing, like that's pretty it's exciting. I mean, obviously on our level we're looking at that with premium collectibles and things, but when NFTs really encompass so much more of the world and illiquid assets, it turns any asset into a financial instrument, which is a super exciting part of the industry. So
transition to immutable. Are you going to use this opportunity to potentially deal with what has been a constant kind of source of concern, which is the idea that there are too many Omi tokens, basically, is 750 billion or 450 billion? Is this an opportunity for you to leave a substantial amount potentially behind? And how much would you be willing to leave behind, if that's even an option? Just basically that. And then the second question I have is, when the transition is complete, what is the implication for timing on decisions around when we're going to see new exchanges like Binance and KuCoin? And if you could give us a bit of a more concrete timetable about when this swap that we're all talking about for the ERC20 tokens will actually open, because some of us are really antsy to get these tokens swapped so that we can keep them in our cold wallet. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So so just to address the second question around the exchanges, obviously, from our side in the company, actually, sorry, just to step back, thank you so much for your support and the kind words. It is, most of the time people don't come to the fore with such positive affirmations about what we're doing. So I really do appreciate that. Now, when it comes to exchanges, obviously right now, one of the other factors that we want to move over to immutable or something that's Ethereum based is that it opens up significantly wider options when it comes to listing on exchanges. Obviously, if we're an ERC20, that is very, very, very well, it's ubiquitous basically across the exchange network. So it's going to make it a lot easier for us to onboard with these exchanges. Right now, we are still absolutely in discussion with exchanges that list GoChain. And one of the things that we just need to consider on our side is that we are right in the middle of this migration. So we really have to decide where we're going to focus our efforts. Do we want to continue working hard on what is ultimately going to be legacy, with GoChain, or are we just going to focus on, the future and what's moving forward? So I know that has always been a point of contention for our OMI holders. But I think the biggest takeaway from this is that the reason, one of the core reasons we are doing this migration is to make it significantly easier for us to onboard with different exchanges. And as David and I have always mentioned, by the end of this year, our plan is still to be on 3, 4, 5 major exchanges. And once this migration takes place, that is going to be significantly easier for us. So stay tuned on that. We are still in the negotiations and in the discussions with exchanges. So we obviously want to make that happen as well. Now to go back to the OMI, right now during this migration, we aren't going. It's more than likely we won't, burn any or leave any behind. Because we just want to make sure that this, even though on the sort of the immutable, the blockchain side, it's a fairly easy transition, but because the token is so heavily integrated into the app, there are a number of different complexities around the migration. Obviously, none that are insurmountable. It's really just making sure that we have everything nailed down on our side. So when we do the transition, everything's going to go perfectly as it does in the world of development. So as I'm sure Robbie can attest to. Right now during this transition we won't be leaving any behind. We have considered something along the lines of doing a 10 to 1 or 100 to 1 or something like that. So perceivably, it doesn't seem like there is so many out there in the total circulating supply. But I think just remember that really the supply is everything that's outside the reserve, the burn wallet, the vault wallet. And the number still may seem, significantly high when we talk about, 300 billion or 400 billion. Even if we were to do a, 100 to 1 or something like that, ultimately there's still going to be the same amount of tokens out there in the circulating supply. So, our real focus between now and the end of the year is absolutely to just make sure we can instill as much utility into the token. And as you guys probably know, we recently announced that that we are working on the OMI directly to NFTs. So no one has to worry about doing gems or anything like that, or converting their OMI to gems and then getting NFT. That is sort of the phase one of bringing utility into the token. And then obviously as we move further forward, there'll be things like staking for the master collector program, using OMI to buy specific collectibles directly in the store, even potentially offering discounts to people who are spending in OMI rather than in fiat. And just really making sure that there is some really strong and solid utility to the token there. All of this stuff has been on the roadmap for quite a long time, and I think anyone who's on the call who's been following Veve for a long time knows that we really went through 4 months of just like, holy shit, we've got 200% or 2,000% more users than we thought we would, and we've had to really focus on a lot of re-engineering in the back end to deal with the demand. So now that is all kind of in place, we're moving forward with things like the migration to Immutable, building in the extra kind of token utility. In terms of the timeline for the Immutable migration, please take this with a grain of salt, because like I say, shit just happens in development, and sometimes things just take a little bit longer. So, which is why I don't normally like to, discuss timeframes. But we are tentatively, it will more than likely be happening between the end of July and the end of August, is when we will start to have, when everything will be in place and the token swap site will be up and so forth. So, really, it's only another 1 month or 1.5 months. In the real world, that's 6 weeks. In the world of crypto, that's 2,000 years. We have 2 feet. We have 2 feet in the crypto world and in the real world. So, as a real world business, we actually move very fast. In the crypto space, unless we're bringing something out, hour on hour, it seems like you're a bit of a dinosaur. But yeah, please be rest assured that we are, working very hard on these things in the back end.
Thank you so much for taking the time to respond. I'm with you guys for the next decade. I am not releasing these coins for anything in the world. God bless you guys. Thank
you very much.
Thank you, brother.
Have you guys done it with any of your other projects? But in terms of us being able to rent out or our collectibles, or even lend our collectibles, we had Claire, who was on earlier on. She's actually going to Liverpool next weekend, where the Batman film was filmed, and I'm happy to lend her my Rizzo, but it's a trust thing, right? So could we actually do that somehow with Immutable? Could we charge for it, or could we do it for free and maybe have it, okay, I'm gonna give it to Claire for 24 hours and then it automatically comes back to me?
Yeah, good question. I actually don't know the answer to this, to be completely honest. I don't think it's possible. Based on the nature of ownership, and unless you've got it in a, like, what you can do is you can have collateral, and you can kind of say, well, this is backed by this thing. But if you're giving something to someone, which is what a loan is giving them possession of it for a certain time. In the real world, that's enforced by counterparties and collateral, and that's the same thing with the blockchain. So the simpler answer is, if you wanted to just functionally loan it, as in have it show up in whatever environment that is, that could be implemented by the application. So they could say, well, it doesn't matter that it's not that technically what they own in their NFT, but we can show it as this. We can kind of implement a lending thing on the top. It is a really tricky thing. People have obviously been trying to do it for ages, but like it's got the exact same risk and difficulties as real life lending does, and I think that's beautiful, because that's what ownership means.
If I can just add to that. So this is something that we have been exploring quite a lot internally as well. We do get quite a few requests for the ability to, loan or rent out the, a particular NFT. And ultimately is something that we would like to do one day with, all of the edition ones that, the Veve company will always own and will be part of the Veveverse. But if you can rent out or have that edition number 1 for a certain amount of time, That's something that's really cool. So from our perspective, it is very much on the application side. So while the ownership at the blockchain level will ultimately not change, we can implement certain things within the app that will allow another user to have someone else's or access to someone else's NFT for a certain amount of time. And then during that period of time, we will do things like, prevent the ability to transfer the collectible out of the app or, list it in the marketplace. All of that stuff we can do fairly easily on the application side without the need to really transfer ownership in the back end. And, to be honest, I think this really is the safest way to do it. One of the things I think all of us here who've been part of the Veve family since the beginning of the year is that there's going to be someone out there who's going to try and scam you. Someone who's going to so at the end of the day, we very much need to be, I think, taking a bit more of a centralized approach to that rather than actually transferring ownership between users, as that will have some inherent issues. And I can already hear Lucas on the support saying, don't do it.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. We're seeing it quite a bit with some of these other projects like Bored Ape and even CryptoPunks, where they're letting other Twitter users use their CryptoPunk or Bored Ape for a certain duration to help get their following happening and stuff like that. So I think in the Veveverse that could be cool. Like if you see someone walking around with, I don't know, the Rizzo skin, if we ever go that far, you're going to capture their eye, you're going to capture their attention with it. So yeah, that'd be pretty exciting if we could do that down the track.
I know that you guys are on our layer 2 that sits on top of Ethereum, and with the Ethereum 2.0 in development, once that is up and functioning, will we see some kind of effect on you guys' end? And for Dan, I had a question about the coin to switch over to Immutable X. All of the accounts, there are accounts out there with people who have homies who no longer keep track of Veve for whatever reason, and those coins will be sitting back on GoChain and remain on GoChain, and they probably won't even, know to switch them over to Immutable X. Is there something along the line for those coins that are going to be left back on the GoChain when we switch over because they're no longer active investors in the company?
Sure. Yeah. Let me answer that second one. Ultimately, those people have purchased those OMI tokens and they have, full ownership over them. And from our perspective, the token swap platform will remain open for an infinite amount of time or an indefinite amount of time. Mr. Mellowman, I'm just going to mute you there because a bit of background noise is coming in. If you want to mute yourself.
Yep. I think I might have got him already.
Can you mute him? Okay. So ultimately, we need to honor anyone who owns OMI tokens. So there is a chance that there will be people out there who have, maybe forgotten they've got some OMI token, or perhaps, maybe just won't end up going through the token conversion process. But at the end of the day, our responsibility to them is to leave that option open for them at any time, even if it's 1 year from now or 2 years from now, they suddenly realize that they've got some OMI and they want to use it. They'll always have the ability and the option to go and swap those tokens.
Oh, perfect. Cool.
Yeah, and to the first question, which is E2, we'll embrace E2. That'll make our costs cheaper. We're very synergistic with it. Vitalik has talked about how the future Ethereum scaling is going to be, zero knowledge rollup based. So I'm very much looking forward to that. I wanted to leave on a note as well, but just as we're wrapping up, which is, part of what we're trying to build with Immutable X is infrastructure, and the other thing we're trying to build is a community. And that's why I think it was, it was awesome and overwhelming to see the reaction when we announced this partnership and to kind of have the love from this incredible community that's been built here. And I just wanted to stay involved because we plan on helping to really cement and forge these partnerships more properly as these partnerships go live through some of the mechanisms of our own as well. So part of our strategy is early adopters of Immutable X. We want to help make sure they're, part of the ecosystem as well. So stay tuned here over the next few months.
Thanks, Robbie. Thanks. That sounds like a breadcrumb if I've ever heard one. But just from all of us, thank you for taking the time to be here today. We're all incredibly excited to be moving over to Immutable and Ethereum. We really appreciate it. And yeah, welcome to the fam. I'm sure all of our community will stay up to date with yours, and we'll try to help each other grow. So thanks again.
Thanks, Robbie. Appreciate you coming on.
Of course, Dan. Thanks, Reese, as well.
That's the video, my friends. If you've made it this far, then I am impressed. And thank you for watching. If you've learned something, then feel free to drop a like for your bromie and share this video with anybody that needs to learn about Immutable X and Veve's migration to it. Yeah, man, Ethereum is going to be huge for us. Not much more to say than that. So, yeah, I'm not a financial advisor, guys. I'm just giving you my opinions here, so take everything that you hear with a grain of salt. Thank you again for watching, and I will catch you in my next video. Peace out and hodl until then. Later.